Dr. Kennedy Graham.
Mr. Speaker, it may not realise it, but this government has ruled out New Zealand's support for any military action that is not authorised by the UN Security Council in Syria. Let me read out to the House the government's answer to my question on action over Syria of 15 February 2012. Kennedy Graham to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Will he give an assurance that New Zealand's armed forces will not be used in any possible military intervention in Syria in violation of the UN Charter? Honourable Dr. Jonathan Coleman, Minister of Defence, on behalf of the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Yes. Kennedy Graham, is he then in a position to confirm that the government does not support external military involvement in Syria unless it responds to a UN Security Council resolution authorising it? That is to say, no coalition of the willing is legal without a mandate. Honourable Dr. Jonathan Coleman, New Zealand always follows the UN Security Council resolutions, so we would not be doing anything in violation of that. I congratulate the government. Let me point out why it was so insightful 18 months ago. Syria is a global human tragedy and a defining moment in the modern struggle for global peace and justice. There can be no lawful military action in Syria without proof of chemical weapon use to the UN Security Council and by whom. And even if proof is provided, there can be no military action without authorisation by the Council. That is not a matter of political judgment. It is a non-negotiable legal requirement. The US is advancing the argument that there is a legal justification based on humanitarian intervention. That is incorrect. That doctrine, more appropriately known today as responsibility to protect, does not trump the UN Charter. That was made clear in UN General Assembly Resolution 61 of 2005, paragraphs 138 and 139. The US is being somewhat disingenuous here. Even if the UN were to authorise military action, thereby making it legal, it would require a separate decision on the part of each country as to the political merit of becoming directly involved. The doctrine lays down 6 criteria for such a judgment. The critical issue is whether the action proposed would relieve suffering rather than cause more. It is almost certain it would not. If we ever need a lesson for caution, it is the illegal military action against Iraq by the US, UK and Australia in 2003. Evidence adduced to the Council as proof of a nuclear weapon program proved to be false, indeed part fabrication. For its part, the much maligned UN Security Council declined to agree to such an invasion. That was not simply a French veto. A majority of the Council opposed military action. Yet those 3 countries proceeded without UN authorisation and illegally. And if, in the case of Syria, the Council chooses not to act because of a veto, it does not mean the Council is dysfunctional and not doing its job. It means the Council has decided not to act. The Council would actually be doing its job, just as it did with Iraq in 2003. Many in the West might resent that fact, retaining a 20th century sense of moral and political superiority. But they cannot disown the fact. Indeed, they created it. They created the UN, and they refuse to this day to change the Charter when the prospect of doing so is before them. They refuse to surrender or even circumscribe their veto. And then, when they confront a situation when another permanent member casts a veto, they seek to circumvent that veto by acting around it. So if the US and UK are concerned about vetoes impeding Security Council action, they can rectify the situation by agreeing to surrender the veto, or at least agree to its strict circumscription when only their vital interests of survival are at stake. Let this Parliament have a chance to debate this matter when it next meets.
Paul Goldsmith.